Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up, baby. Tonight we gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We gonna light it up.
Hello, hello. We are live back here in Virginia, taking your heating and air questions live. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm getting over a cold, but Bob already pointed it out. We were not here last week, so hopefully, Bob, you didn't get our weeks crossed there. He says you thought I was away on a cruise. I was away on a cruise last week, so we are back live here with you guys this week. I believe we are going to be here tonight, and then we will be gone again next week. It's just a weird month for me. I'm going to be in Houston next week at a Daikin thing, and I'm going to try to do the live show down there, but I am not hopeful based on everything it looks like we've got going on. So I would not look for me to be here next week, but if I am, great. So anyway, welcome you guys. Good to see Bob and Steve and Carl. Good to see you guys. Wanted to start out tonight's show with an interesting story out of, it says this place, this new news organization is out of Greenville, North Carolina. And the story reads, Onslow, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, County Sheriff says 2 HVAC units failed this weekend at the jail. And I thought it'd be an interesting story to start our show out with. So let's tune in here and then I'll read the article.
Moved inmates at the Onslow County Detention Center after an AC unit stopped working yesterday. According to Sheriff Chris Thomas, the women were to receive a part needed for the repair. WITN was reached out by multiple family members this morning saying their relatives that are inmates were suffering in extreme heat due to the problem. Thomas told WITN that the temperatures have not exceeded state requirements to require the move, But he did say that he decided to go ahead and relocate these inmates out of caution. Thomas also says there have been no reports of heat-related injuries that he is aware of.
So yeah, interesting story. Let's see if I can get it back to our article here. Bear with me. It says Onslow County Sheriff now says 2 air conditioning units at the county jail failed this weekend. This story looks like the article was back August 28th of 2023. So about a month ago. Well, not even a month. About a month and a couple weeks. Units at the county jail failed this weekend, and that there was one heat-related injury. In a news release, Sheriff Chris Thomas said each cell block has its own HVAC unit and that they normally keep one cell block empty in case of a failure, but inmate population prevented that when a unit went down Friday in a female cell block. He said an inmate fell in her cell, striking her head for Friday evening in what was called heat related. The sheriff said that the inmate was treated and released from the hospital and returned to the jail. While women in the cell block were moved to other locations on Saturday, Thomas said that the temperature range at the time of the fall was between the state's required range of 68 to 85 degrees. Wow. So they're only required to keep it under 85 degrees. The sheriff said on Sunday morning a second unit broke, this one in a male cell block. He said fans and other measures were taken to keep airflow moving in the cell block and temperatures remained within the state's guidelines. The county is working to keep repair parts on site, but Thomas said supply chain issues have affected this practice. WITN was reached out to by family members on Saturday morning, saying their relatives who are inmates, they are suffering in extreme heat due to the problem. So yeah, it's just a crazy story. I think that the interesting thing is even where's Josh? Carl says, where's Josh? Even jails have to worry about this sort of stuff, right? In fact, they probably have way more challenges than your average business that has to worry about keeping the heat and AC on. They have to worry about security, I'm sure, to a degree, and they also have to worry about what to do with the inmates if the AC is not working, in extreme temperature situations. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting story to start tonight's show out with. And just a crazy story. Let's see. Steve says heat is not a necessity. Heat is a necessity. AC is not. That's definitely true. As the further you go north, I think their laws, they don't have necessarily laws for AC. So if the AC goes out, on certain public places, they have no requirement. The reason I'm talking, or I know, or I can speak to that, is I used to work for a property management company doing their heating and air years ago. And there were certain properties we had to worry about, like in the common areas, or, we had to keep the heat at a certain temperature, but AC, I don't remember there being a requirement, so Steve says it's got to be a pain to service anything in a jail. Yeah, I would imagine there's probably measures in place that are not elsewhere. I remember years ago, actually long years ago. In fact, I was a kid. I had a girlfriend who her dad worked at the jail. He was actually head of maintenance at our local, and it wasn't a jail, it was a prison. It was a maximum security prison. And I remember her telling me that the food was good there and we should go there and eat. And she said, don't worry about the prisoners. They're always really nice. And I was like, of course they're nice to you. You're a little teeny bopper girl. Of course they're nice to you. That. Let's see. Steve said, like going through TSA to get into an Amazon. I can only imagine, you know, if you take some tools in there, I'm sure they all got to be accounted for when you leave, you know. I've never had to deal with it, Carl says. Yeah, I've never worked anywhere at a jail, a prison, or anything like that, doing any sort of work. So I bet that would be interesting. And actually, I take that back. I never worked there, but I applied for a job years ago. They had a head of maintenance. I was working for a company doing all their maintenance and the heating and air and all that. And I applied for a job at the local prison to do the same thing. And I can't remember why, but basically I never even went to sit for the interview, but I do remember them calling me. So I'm not sure what happened from that phone call. Maybe, I don't know, maybe something wasn't right, or maybe I just wasn't interested anymore. That was a long time ago. Ryan says, are stainless steel heat exchangers better than aluminized steel heat exchangers? Do you see the different rates for failure between the two types of metal? I don't have any actual data on that, but I do know that the warranties are typically better on the stainless steel ones. Emery says, why do people steal AC units for the copper? Well, that's why they steal them. They get the copper and then they take it to a metal recycling place and get money for it. So I think there's better ways to make money, obviously, but that is one thing that people do, you know. Gary says, I'm a little late to the gathering. Glad to be here, Josh and friends. Good to see you, Gary. Thanks for joining us. If you guys can't tell, I'm getting over I say a cold. I'm actually getting over COVID. I got COVID on my my cruise last week. So I'm no longer testing positive. We just tested me tonight, and so I am testing negative now. But you know, I'm still got a little bit of a cold, I guess you could say. The reminiscences of a cold. Drug addiction drives them. Yeah. Steve says shoes off, belt gone, and empty pockets. Boots have to be completely removed and tools inspected in and out. So Steve, it sounds like you have gone through this. Maybe you better mind your P's and Q's, or they might do a cavity check. I say that jokingly, but I wonder if stuff like that may happen if they might have to really make sure everything's okay. Carl says, you better not have to make any trips to your truck. Exactly. So anyway, it's good to see you guys. I'm glad to be back. Last week we did go on a cruise. We went on a Royal Caribbean cruise. It was called the Wonder of the Seas. I don't know if any of you guys are cruisers or if y'all ever do any of that sort of stuff, but this is some pictures of it. And I believe, I could be wrong on this, but I believe right now it's the largest cruise ship in the world. It's about to be passed by a ship that's supposed to launch next year. But it was a good time. We went to some pretty crazy shows. They have something called an aqua theater, where they do water shows. And I don't know, maybe if I could figure out how to show it here on the show, I'll show you guys some of that. But it's just a pretty good time. And let me see if I can move this over to the computer here. They also have an ice rink in there. We went to a couple shows there, and just a really good time. I've got a 2-year-old, for those of you that don't know, and she definitely enjoyed herself. I grew up poor, so my wife and I were talking about how she just does not know how spoiled she is. It's just pretty crazy. Ryan says, on my next furnace, do you recommend going stainless or both the primary for both the primary and secondary heat exchanger? I currently a 90% furnace. I also hear 80% furnaces are better for longevity. Should I switch to 80%? I don't know if they do last longer necessarily, but if I had to guess, I would also throw my hat on that side of the ring. You know, some of you other pros, I'd be curious what your thoughts are, but I think in general, I think most pros would probably say that a non-condensing, low efficiency furnace does last longer than a high efficiency furnace, even if the warranty is not as good. They just seem to, you know, some of them, you know, you can't kill them. You know, they just keep on. You know, you might have the indoor fan motor go bad, and you might replace that, and then you get another 10 years out of the thing. But as long as the heat exchanger doesn't get cracked and it just keeps on chugging along, they do seem to last a very long time. That said, I think that you are going to see a time possibly where high efficiency furnaces are all you're going to be able to buy if you buy a furnace. The You know, not to get political, but the current president and his administration have already talked about that. How they want to do away with low efficiency furnaces and make it to where it's only high efficiency furnaces. So that's something that's been talked about. And, you know, I think that they have even looked at putting legislation in place to make that happen. Steve says, yeah, 2 trips at the most, just a lot of wasted time. I get paid by the hour. Carl says, a royal pain. You must be a carnival lover if you like cruising at all. I don't know. Ryan says, Oasis class ship. I've been on one of those. Fun times. Good enough. I don't think cruises are like my favorite. Like if I had to pick, like I would probably prefer like just going somewhere and staying on land, you know, and just being a little more relaxed kind of thing. As long as there's something to do, I'm usually happy. I'm not the type to just go lay on a beach and do nothing. I'm usually the guy that'll do that for at most an hour. And then now I want to know what we're going to do next. I can't just sit there. But there's a lot to do on a cruise ship, and you know, we had a good time. That's for sure. Let me see if this video came through, and it looks like it did. Is there a way that I can show y'all this? This is actually, for those of you that care, this is actually a clip of the show the show that we went to. Let's see, entire screen. Window. Let's see. I think this is the one. Can I do this? Hopefully you guys can see this. Yes, it looks like you guys can see this. All right, so here's the water show that was on the ship. This video doesn't do it justice. They were jumping from probably 20 feet, 25 feet above this pool into it, diving into it. So, I wonder if I can get this other one sent over here. There we go. Let's see. Stop sharing. Anyway, back to your questions. I know some of you guys are here to get your heating and air questions answered. So let me try to get back to that. Let's see. Chat. Let's see. Persian Fear says, any advice for a commercial tech looking to get into residential work as a side gig? Interesting question. I guess the big thing I would say that I, would say to almost everyone is, if you're going to do side work, make sure it's licensed and insured side work. But if you are licensed and you're going to get your side work insured, yeah, I think there's a number of ways that you could get into it if you wanted to really be serious about getting, work going. One thing I did when I first started my business, because we did primarily residential, or we do primarily residential, is I would cold call apartment complexes, restoration companies, and of course construction companies if I was, wanting to do new construction, which we don't do a lot of, but when you're starving, you'll eat anything. So I would cold call them and introduce myself and ask them if I could at least be their backup, if I could give them an estimate on their next project. And the other thing is that I did is I made yard signs that seemed to work pretty well. So I don't know if that helps you at all. Actually, one tip that, well, you're saying that you want to get into residential as the side gig. I have a guy that is we have these growth groups that if you go to our website that, guys will sign up to be in. And we've got these groups where we'll meet once a week or once every other week and bounce ideas off of each other. And one of them, he was telling us that he called all of his quote unquote competitors and said, hey, if you get anything that you can't, if it's just outside of your wheelhouse or it's more work than you can keep up with, I'd appreciate if you threw them my way. And he got a pile of work just off of that. His company grew by $1.5 million by doing just that, which I thought was crazy. Steve says, if well maintained, both are okay. Let's be real. Nothing lasts over 10 to 15 years anymore. That's true. Irving Clark says, welcome to the show, Irving. Usually you dock between 8 and 5 p.m. I don't know if he's talking about the cruise. I guess he's talking about the cruise ships. Rish Couture. Hopefully I'm saying that okay. I'll call you Rish. Which heat pump brand is best? We all have our favorites. Well, I think the big three right now are probably Daikin, Amana, and Goodman. Is one. So Daikin owns all of those brands. Number two would probably be Trane, who owns American Standard and a number of other brands. And then the third one would be Carrier, and which owns Bryant and all the ICP brands. So I would say those are the big three. I would focus on finding a good contractor and going with the brand they recommend. I know there's some Rheem and Rude lovers out there and some Lennox lovers out there that would like to think that they're part of the big three, but they're just not. Not right now, they're not. So those are the big three. And but yeah, I would say that find a good contractor and go with the brand they recommend. I wouldn't worry as much about which one's best. But most of you that have watched any of my content, you know who I like. I'm usually not too shy about it. I'm not big on bashing a whole lot of brands, but I'm not afraid to do it if somebody falls short on something. Irving says not enough time to get the flavor of the island. That is true. That is true. I don't know if I could choose between staying a couple nights somewhere or doing the cruise, I would definitely, do the former of the two. But cruising has its place too. It's nice for a family vacation to, and of course, fat guy like me and all the food you can eat, can't go wrong there either. So, it's not my favorite, but I don't hate it, So Gary says, thanks for sharing your water show experience. Josh, seems your little one was into it. What a huge venue on a ship, no less. Yeah, it's just crazy all the stuff that they've got there. Let me show you guys that, because I didn't actually like that video that I just showed you. Let me show you this other one real quick. Hopefully you guys are okay with me showing you this stuff. Let's see. Stop screen. Let me show you guys this one. This one's actually a little better. So there you go. Again, I still didn't show you a clip of the people jumping from really high heights, but kind of just gives you an idea. If you could see where it looks like the people are walking on top of the water, they had something underneath the water that would open, and then they could dive into it, and then it would close, and they could stand on top of the water. So it was just kind of a cool show all in all. And like I say, they had an ice skating rink and shows there, and we just had a good time. So, hey, Arch, good to see you. Arch from Arizona, good to see you. Ryan says, have you heard of the YouTube channel HVAC Technology? He's a local tech in my area. Hopefully I'll be able to share his company's name as a recommendation soon after my heating season PM. Good enough. No, I have not heard of his channel. But I appreciate you sharing that, and I will make sure to check out his channel. Ryan, do you like his content so far? I do watch a couple other guys, just to kind of, see what everybody else is doing. And, I'm a fan too. So, I was a fan before I started this channel, actually. Steve says installation means more the name on the equipment. Totally true. The installer's way more important than what brand that equipment is. Emery says, how does a multi-stage system work? Well, that's a loaded question because there's different types of staged systems. There's two-stage compressors. So if you have like a multi-stage heat pump or air conditioner, the way that works is a compressor can run at a lower capacity. So if it's in first stage, it might be only running at, say, 70% capacity. And then when it second stage, it sends voltage on that Y2, then that compressor runs at 100% capacity. There's other stage systems. There's staged furnaces where gas valves do the same thing, where if the first stage of that gas valve kicks open, it might only blow at a, it's meant to save gas. So it, will only burn at a lower capacity, and then, open up entirely and run at the highest, 100% capacity of that furnace, BTUs. And then there's also multi-stage blowers, blower motors. Typically you're talking about an ECM motor when you're talking about that. So depending on what mode it's in, it may run at different speeds. Cooling mode might be running at, say, 400 CFMs per ton, whereas when it goes into heating mode, it might be running at only 350 or whatever, So there's different stage blower motors as well. But I think all in all, to answer your question, as in general, if you hear a company, if a contractor or a technician says this is a two-staged heating and air system, they're usually referring to that outdoor unit, that it's a two-stage compressor on that system. And that's typically what they're talking about, because Usually, now there's exceptions to every rule, but usually they're going to pair that with a variable speed indoor unit anyway, whether it be a variable speed blower furnace or variable speed air handler. Arch says Riemann Rude are most common down here. Parts are readily available here and they're supposedly easy to repair. I don't disagree with that. And I think that's, I actually appreciate you sharing that, because there's different parts of the country where, one of the big three may not even be available, or two of the big three, for example. If you live in a really small town, you may only have a handful of options or less. I helped a lady a couple years ago on our website that she had three companies, three total in her entire area, for her to be able to call and get air conditioning service, and one of them wouldn't call her back. So that really narrowed her options. So yeah. Ryan says, always funny to hear the big three comments. The other companies you leave out make billions. That's totally true. That's totally true. I think when I talk about those big three, I'm referring to, I'm referring to sales is obviously one of them. So, if a company has more sales than another, that's a part of the conversation. But I also would say that, if you were to take a consensus across the industry, you're going to find more people that would say that those are the big three versus the others. It's sort of like mini splits. If you were to say, who are the big three with mini splits? Well, I think in general here in North America, you're going to say Daikin, Mitsubishi, and it used to be Fujitsu was the other one for the big three, but I'm not sure that's the case anymore. It might be a lot of heating and air guys might say Daikin, Mitsubishi, and now maybe Gree. It might be the big three. So it's kind of, it's some of it's subjective, but some of it's, sales. Ryan said, should have asked the captain for an HVAC tour of the ship. Imagine that equipment. I can only imagine. In fact, funny you said that. When we were in our room, my wife one night was like, what are you doing? Because I was looking at the thermostat and I kept looking up, and she's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm trying to figure out this heating and air system. This is different than the average residential heating and air system. So it was different for sure. Ryan says he makes good content, but doesn't post much. Seems very knowledgeable. That's why I booked him. Tired of getting people focused on selling me stuff and not keeping my system running. Good enough. Yeah. Let me know how that works. Adrian, what up? What up? Adrian, you're probably about to ramp up for your show. So, I'll be tuning in after mine's done. Arch says, I originally thinking about a train, but heard that parts were more expensive and harder to find, and they're more labor intensive to repair. Yeah, I mean, I actually think that Carrier, at least in my area, Carrier parts are the most expensive. They think their stuff's made of gold sometimes, but as far as how hard things are to work on, I don't really put anybody above anyone else when it comes to. I mean, I think that there's exceptions to every rule. Some of them make it harder or easier to get to their stuff than others, but I don't know that any of them are significantly harder or anything like that. That's just something I feel like people say, but that's just how I feel. I mean, you might talk to another heating and air guy, and he may say that, he actually thinks trains harder to work on. I don't know. I think for trains specifically for me, I've worked for a number of companies that installed it. So it's hard for me to say it's hard because, it was the one that we installed the most of and I worked on the most at times. So I didn't have anything else it wasn't like we were installing another brand and, oh my gosh, every time I get one of these, they're just hard. There was no way for me to just say that they weren't hard to me, they were just, it was another day at work for us, Ryan says, you are talking the big three in terms of innovation, sales, and reputation. Makes sense. Uh, I think that's a good summary for that as well. I think Linux is the one where guys seem to get upset. You know, I think a lot of guys that sell, say, Ream or I don't know, York or some of these other brands, I think that they are sometimes like, well, it's not one of the big three, but I'm okay with that. It is what it is, right? But Linux is the one where you have a lot of heating and air guys that seem to want to fight. You know, if you say that they're not one of the big three, they're like, yes, it is, you know. And but I think you're right when it comes to especially the newer products and some of the cool things that they're coming out with. Linux comes out with some stuff. I'm not saying they don't, but the big three that I just mentioned seem to kind of be the big three. Brian says, sorry, I'm late. New puppy and chicks. Nice. Do you raise chickens, Brian? Sorry if I don't say your name correctly. Chucho? I'll call you Chew. How about that? Chew says, are you familiar with the Daikin Fit and or the Amana S series, and thoughts? Am I familiar with it? Yes, I'm very familiar with it. My company has installed, I don't know. I don't have the exact number, but I would bet probably close to 100 fits now, maybe more. I don't know. Maybe 200. I have no idea. I've never kept count. But it's been a bunch of the fits. We installed the first fit in the area that I live in. And I don't know that for sure either, but until someone tells me differently, I'm going to continue saying that we installed the first fit in our area. And my thoughts are, I like them. I think that whoever installs them needs to know what they're doing, and they need to read the instructions. They need to make sure that the controller is sending the proper voltage, the 6 volts through the communication. And if not, it needs to be worked on. But other than that, we don't have a lot of problems with them. I really do like them. In fact, I'm going to eventually put a Daikin Fit in my home. Emery says, which brand is the hardest to get parts for? Ooh, Emery's asking the tough questions tonight. I'm sure, there's a couple other pros in our chat here, and we could probably all give a different answer depending on what area we're in. And I also think it changes from time to time. There have been times when I thought Train would probably be at the top of that list, where it just seemed like we were having a bunch of issues, lead times getting parts. There's times with, just about any of them. It seems to be that there are, maybe a specific part or two that, we've got to wait to get, a board or whatever the part is. But I don't know what my answer would be to that right now. I guess it's whatever one I'm having issues with at that time. As far as that goes, it seems like, especially since COVID, the original pandemic hit, there's been supply chain issues here, there, and everywhere from time to time. So, Riley just said Goodman is a nightmare here in California. Whereas Goodman here, I can't say that I hardly ever have problems getting parts for them. I mean, I can't say I never have had a problem, but our local suppliers, I've got 3 different suppliers I could call for a part, and usually they're the parts on the shelf, or I can get it within a day or two. So that's interesting. Let's see. Ryan says, besides Daikin, what inverter systems have you worked on, and are there any that you would avoid? I'm not going to answer the avoid question because I don't think that would be fair, but I have worked on Train and American Standards inverter systems. I've worked on Linuxes. I've worked on Reams, and I've worked on Carriers just off the top of my head. I will say that Carrier, I do like their Infinity touchscreen thermostats way better than the old ones. When it comes to their inverter stuff. And then I will say that Train and American Standard, I've always liked that 1050 thermostat. It's one of the only thermostats that I feel like when a customer spends $500 to $600 on the controller, it looks like they spent $500 to $600 on the controller, unlike some of the other brands. Some of the brands you you buy the thermostat and you spent $500 and you get it and you're like, really? This thing was $500, you know? But they all have their quirks, and I don't, as far as avoiding them, I mean, I have my preferences, but you know, I think of all those that I just mentioned. I mean, if I sold that brand and I thought it was great, I wouldn't say, avoid their inverter technology for one reason or another. Gary says, have to say, Josh, you really cracked me up as you played around with the ship's HVAC. Yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing with the ship's heating and air system too is if you would open your balcony door, it would shut down the heating and air system. So I thought that was, I was kind of looking at that too, trying to figure out, is that wired through the low voltage, or is that set up a different way, or, so on. Brian says he has 14 chickens, 3 one-day-old chicks. Brian, do you raise those to eat them, or are you just raising them like a farmer? Are you or maybe you're raising them for the eggs? Maybe that's probably more likely. Arch says, how about the Daikin Fit? Is it reliable and fairly straightforward to repair? I'm explaining the feasibility of converting the linen closet to house the air handler and put the condenser on the roof. Is it fairly straightforward to repair? I mean, are they as simple as a single stage system? No. But I really like the I like the capabilities of going into the Daikin 1, especially with the One Cloud stuff now. They also have a product called a D checker that a lot of technicians can use to connect to the system. It'll give them a lot of readings. It's actually quite impressive how the technology has gotten to where it, we always joke about, instead of using pliers and screwdrivers, we're going to be using laptops to fix air conditioners in the future. And I think those days are here. I know Unico has those systems where you've got to sometimes plug it into a laptop to see what's going on. And, I think that a lot of these brands are right behind that, right on board with that as well. But Daikin has that D checker, and, it'll tell you if something's, wrong or off as well. Jose says, what's up from Santa Ana, California? Welcome to the show, Jose. Ryan says, I heard you just say that you'll be putting in a Daikin Fit in your home. How many systems do you have? And if more than one, why not the VRV Life instead of the Fit? Great question. Simply the answer is one system is way older than the other. So I have 2 systems, one in my upstairs. Well, actually, I take that back. I have 3 systems now because I'm building a studio to do these videos out in the back. And it's sort of basically a shed that we're calling it a studio. And we put a Daikin Aurora series mini split in there. But aside from that, I've got a downstairs system that we replaced just a couple years ago. And that's when Bosch first came out with those non-communicating inverter systems. So I put one of those in my downstairs. And then as far as my upstairs goes, it's I don't know exactly how old it is, but it's probably about 13, 14-year-old Goodman. And as soon as that goes or dies, we're going to put a Daikin Fit upstairs. Matt C says all ductwork and HVAC systems replaced in recently bought home. Contractor replaced old metal trunk line with insulation inside in crawl space and all flex ducts. To my surprise, is this normal and okay? Well, I'm not a big fan of the ductwork that has the liners, although that I've seen a lot of it. The main thing that I would make sure, Matt, is I would definitely have it maintained. I would make sure that that system is not leaking. That's the big thing with the lined stuff is, there are products or machines out there that can clean the ductwork, but that stuff, if it starts to get moisture and stuff in there, I have seen mold growing on that liner. And I've seen mold growing on all kinds of things, so it's not like I would lose sleep about that, but I would have it inspected from time to time and make sure that everything's okay. And then I would probably also look at some indoor air quality products. Maybe, I know that ionizers are kind of a frowned upon in some circles, but maybe an ionizer and or a UV light in that area. If you put a UV light that's shining on that liner, ain't no mold going to grow on it then. Ryan says, have you ever regretted only offering just one brand? I know you believe in a contractor going all in, but have you ever been in a situation where you couldn't make a sell due to supply chain constraints? So that's a loaded question. I would say until we became a Daikin dealer, I always offered more than one brand for a number of reasons. One reason is for a few years, we were an American Standard dealer, and I did not feel like American Standard offered a very good budget friendly option. Like there were some builder grade, budget friendly brands out there, and American Standard didn't have anything that could compete. Whereas I feel like Daikin does have a few products that we can. So going back to those days when we were an American Standard dealer, I always offered, at least if nothing else, a budget friendly option to those customers. And we bounced around with that, offering different brands at different times for different reasons. But I've also always offered for customers of ours that have mobile homes options that would work for them, because not all brands, including American Standard and Daikin, offer mobile home products. Now, you might be able to install a mobile home furnace and then put a Daikin or an American Standard outdoor unit matched with a coil, but you're not going to be able to use it as an all-in-one solution. Now, there are guys out there that would disagree with that, and they throw air handlers in mobile homes, but what they don't understand and where they're falling short and doing a disservice to those folks is air handler is not meant for those high static applications. And so even if you make it work, it's not meant for that particular application. And so even today, even though I only offer Daikin 90% of the time, there are still that 10% of the time when Daikin just simply doesn't offer a product that goes with that. I mean, we don't do a lot of it. Well, in fact, we don't do any geothermal, but if I were to start doing geothermal tomorrow, I would have to, look elsewhere. They don't have a geothermal option with Daikin. If I were to have a mobile home customer, they don't have a mobile home furnace, So, I don't know if that answers your question per se, as far as what we all have always offered, but the last part of your question is, have we ever had issues and had to consider selling one option versus another or offer something different because of supply chain issues? And the answer to that is only once or twice. During COVID, Daikin was one of the only brands I felt like that seemed to handle it okay. I'm not saying they didn't have any problems, but there were some brands that they were smacked in the mouth and they couldn't get parts, or they couldn't get boards, or they couldn't get whatever. And, I don't think the entire pandemic we ever felt like we couldn't get anything at any time. There were times where we might have to wait a couple weeks to get something, a few weeks to get something, but we were pretty blessed in that we never dealt with anything worse than that. Ryan says, what are your good, better, best Daikin heat pump options that you offer customers now? Great question. Right now we offer, some of you guys are going to be like, good grief, did I just tune into a Daikin commercial? No, it's just, I sell Daikin and Ryan's asking this question. But right now we offer, we were doing just a good, better, best, but recently we did start offering a budget friendly option, even lower than our good. But and that one would be their just absolute lowest SEER possible, which I think, if I remember correctly, is 14.3 for the heat pumps in our area, because every area is different too. So if you go up north or if you go out west, it's a little different. But so that's one. And then our next one up is the 15.2, I think it is, SEER 2, which is basically a 16 SEER equivalent, single stage. We don't offer the two-stage stuff just because the next one up from that is the fit. So then we go from that. Our better option is going to be the fit, and then our best option is going to be their 20 SEER system, inverter system. Francisco Rodriguez, welcome to the show, says, how often do you have to call tech support on Daikin products, and how is their tech support? So I think that there are times when we don't need to call them at all, but then there seems to be, at least during the summer, there's going to be a few times. There's been a few times where it seems like we've had to call them from time to time, right? My guys will be, calling me, and I'll just say, hey, call, one of the guys, Daikin folks on that. But so I don't know the answer as far as how often. Luckily, not that often. It's not like we call them daily or even weekly. But I rarely call their tech support line because we have a few contacts there. We have a regional tech support guy. We've got a couple other reps that we have, I don't know, met, or I don't even know how we got their numbers. I think it's just one of those deals where, usually if we are calling, not to sound arrogant, but if me or my top guy is calling, it's usually a head scratcher. It's not something simple. It's not one of those, something simple like, is the contactor bad? Usually if we're calling, it's something's a little different, little head scratcher. And we usually, we have a couple of guys that we'll talk to. So, aside from that, I mean, I think that their tech support is great. I can tell you that of all the years, and this is not a huge knock on, it just is what it is, but all the years that we sold those other brands, American Standard in particular, I sold their stuff for almost 5 years, and I can't tell you, I don't think I have the phone number of one single person at the company. And it's no offense. I mean, that they're structured the way they're structured, and that may not be the case with your local Train or American Standard rep. But for me, after selling it for almost 5 years, I didn't have the phone number of one single person at corporate. Where with Daikin, I have at least a dozen. I've got a dozen different phone numbers that I can call. If it's a VRV Life, I got a guy that I can call. If it's a Fit, I've got a couple of different people. And so we've just been blessed in that. And that's part of the reason we sell their stuff, to be honest with you. The culture and the willingness to want to help and the appreciation of our business, I guess, is refreshing, But that's just me. No offense to any of those other companies. That's just, that's been our experience with them and why we, enjoy it. Hello to TJ. Welcome to the show. Let's see. Man, we've been rolling with some questions tonight, guys. I appreciate that. Let's take a moment. We always have a breakaway segment on our show, and let's take a moment for I'm trying to find my little thing here. Let's take a moment for one of my favorite breakaway segments is my goofy inventions. And so let's share this week's goofy invention. So this week's goofy invention, I wouldn't say it's so goofy, especially as compared to some of the other inventions that we've shared in the past. But this week's goofy invention is something that I am surprised that there's not. It may already be invented, but it's not being used widespread. And as I've envisioned it in my head, I don't think it's invented at all. And that is tonight's goofy invention is plastic ductwork. Plastic ductwork. And the reason I thought of this one is you know, the problem with metal ductwork is, you know, over time. And so, you know, if you were to have, say, plastic, you know, like a high quality, heavy duty plastic material of ductwork, you might have to get it cleaned from time to time, but hypothetically, it would have a lifetime warranty on it. It would outlast you and I. Now, I think we both know right from the get go the biggest issue with this, and I think they could overcome this issue, and that is if there were a such thing as plastic ductwork, the carbon footprint that it would impose. You know, metal does break down, it does rust, it does. If you were to put it in a landfill, it would eventually, you know, disappear. Plastic ductwork could fill up, you know, all these landfills. So, you know, having some sort of biodegradable material, you know, that they, you know, would not, you know, be you know, a problem in that department. But just having, you know, plastic ductwork is, you know, I think a good goofy invention, if you want to call it that. And I'm actually surprised it's not something that we don't see more of. It's not something that we, you know, I think of all the, if you were to look at those, Ryan says that they do have something called RHEIA ductwork, RHEIA, RHEIA. Let's see. Let's see if this ductwork is quite what I was envisioning. Easy to install heating and air conditioning solution built with cost-efficient, improved comfort in mind. So yeah, this looks like a flexible tubing type of ductwork. Not quite what I was envisioning, but maybe they have some more than just this. Is this what you were talking about, Ryan? Is this You know, I was envisioning something more like, let me see if this brings up anything. Plastic duct. Man, if I could spell tonight, duct work. You know, I was picturing like, you know, especially if you think of like square duct, you know, duct work that, you know, that you could almost, you know, like when you get a piece of sheet metal and you use your break it the same way, or, you know, maybe you would have to heat it a little bit to kind of make it to shape or something like that. But, you know, something along these lines right here, plastic ducting. Yeah, like this right here, you know. So I don't think it's something that I don't think that I've come up with something that drastic. I would say that there's probably a likelihood that it already does exist, but it's not something I see, you know, mass marketed, you know, around. Yeah, something like this is kind of what I was envisioning. You know, you can almost kind of create to be able to fabric, you know, have your sheets of plastic, and then when you get to the corners like this, have some sort of, you know, caulk, or, you know, not caulk, but, you know, some sort of material in a caulk tube that you would put along the seam, and it would literally glue it, and, you know, and hold it in place. I don't know, just something I thought of. And, you know, I think it would be if they were to create it like I see it in my head, it would be a great product. I think I just did I just close? Oh, there it goes. Phew. I thought I closed the window that we're streaming from. So I kind of freaked out there for a second. Bob says customers want durable ductwork, nothing biodegradable at all. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I just think that you know, if they did it right, I think that it would be, you know, and if you guys want to steal my idea and go be a billionaire off of my goofy ductwork idea, then fine. But I think that if they did it right, it would last a long time and people wouldn't have to worry about the ductwork, um, you know, corroding or rusting or any of that stuff. And I know there's parts of the country where you don't have to worry about that anyway, but wouldn't it be great that, if even in the humid swamps of Louisiana and Florida and those areas that are just really humid all the time and relentless, they have an option of being able to have, some sort of material for their ductwork that never has to worry about the humidity. TJ says, when upsizing a unit half ton, do you typically recommend upsizing the ductwork as well? Well, I think that's a loaded question, but all in all, if the ductwork was sized properly from the get-go, going up 6,000 BTUs, the extra airflow that would be involved with that, I don't think your static would be outrageous, considering most ductwork out there is undersized to start with. So it just depends on the situation, TJ, especially considering, as I said, most ductwork is undersized to start with. So if you were to go up another half ton, you could have more issues, especially if it wasn't sized properly from the get-go. Emery says, what do you think of flex duct? I don't have any thoughts on it. We install it in our area. It's not uncommon to see a house here in Virginia that has flex duct in it. So, but anyway, for those of you that weren't here at the beginning of our show, just a reminder, we were not here last week and we might not be here next week either. I'm going to be in Houston at a thing for Daikin, and just wanted to remind you guys that, we may not be here. I'm going to try to be here. So just keep an eye on the community tab on our YouTube or on our Facebook page. I will try to update it there and let you know that if there is, if we're going to have the show, I'll let you know. If we're not going to have the show, I'll let you know one way or the other. So Gary says, great show tonight. Look forward to next week with you and our friends here. Be well with you and yours. Thanks, Gary. Like I say, we'll try to be here. If not, if we're not here, then we'll be back the week after next. Again, this has just been a crazy month, with the vacation and then now this thing coming up. And I knew it was coming. I knew October was going to be a crazy month. And then, and there's even stuff that it's not affecting the show, but it's just been a crazy, crazy month. I've got to go to Charlotte, North Carolina this week for a thing. And, it's just one thing after another. So I knew it was going to be a crazy month, but it's just been relentless. Paul says that there's a product, I think it's pronounced Zender, that makes some plastic options as well. So yeah, it looks like there's several brands out there. I think in my mind, I was picturing something like, the polycarbonate air handlers that Train and American Standard make, is them having a ductwork that's made of that same sort of material. And Bob, it looks like I missed one of your comments above, so I apologize. He says, when I was selling American Standard equipment, our distributor had several territory managers that were able to help us with odd stuff. Nice. Paul says, great show. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate the kind words. Ryan says, my neck of the woods. Yeah, so we will be wrapping up soon, guys. So if you do have any last minute heating and air questions, get those in there and we will try to get those answered. I do appreciate you guys that join us every week. And those of you that haven't joined us before, hopefully you got something out of this and we'll see you again. But we do end the show every week very similar. And that is, if you know of a good heating and air company across this great nation, or continent, feel free to share who they are and where they're located. Number one, sharing some love for that company, but you never know, somebody in your area may see your message and you'll be able to help that company out. So if you know a good heating and air company in your area, share their name and where they're located as we're wrapping it up. Just share that in the chat. Bob says, take care of your health. It's priceless. Amen to that. Ryan says, what's the scariest crawl space you've had to work in? Anytime I call companies and I say I have a crawl space, I can tell they hate it. And I explain it's a tall crawl space that's encapsulated. So what's the scariest? Well, one of the first YouTube videos I did, and it wasn't one of the first, but it was probably in the first 100, is called Scary Creature in Crawl Space. You guys should watch that video. I was sitting in a crawl space one night doing a late night call, and I think it was like, I don't know, 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And, I was working on a furnace. And when you're in a crawl space, you don't expect for there to be anything else, right? You don't want there to be any movement, any sounds, anything, right? And if there is, you're on high alert. What was that noise? What is that moving in the crawl space, right? And so there I am working on a furnace, and I shine my light over, and there's a dog in the crawl space with me with a satellite dish, with one of those, but his was made of cardboard, a cardboard cone on his head. And you go from fear, you're like, what is in this crawl space with me, to the just absolute, I couldn't stop laughing. I was so tickled looking at this dog with a cone on his head. So that was probably the scariest crawl space I've ever been in, because it scared the crap out of me. But yeah, we've been in some not so fun ones. In fact, I've been to some homes where we have said to the homeowner, you need to take care of this or that before we can work in there safely. So whether that's, clean up the swamp that is some crawl spaces, fix whatever the problem is and why it's a swamp under there, whether it's the insulation is just in such bad shape and falling, and telling them that all needs to be cleaned up, whether it's some sort of infestation of some sort of critters. There's times when we have to tell them, hey, you need to get all this, get all these roaches exterminated, or these snakes or rodents, or whatever the problem is. We've told homeowners, for us to be able to work in there, that's got to be resolved. And so, it's not something we do a lot, but there are times when we have to do that. So Arch says, don't forget about the fit package unit. Arch is pushing for that. Arch, they told me when I did the factory tour, when I brought that up, they said, just let him know that, we can't give him any timelines, but we are working on some things, is what they told me. Ryan says, hopefully I'll have a company name to share next show. I hope that is too. I'd love to, especially if he has a YouTube channel, maybe we can, and he's good and you're happy, we can find out about all that. So anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap up now. I appreciate you guys. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, that always helps. We appreciate your support. Definitely hit that subscribe button. And as always, we should be back next Tuesday, if possible. If not, I'll let you guys know in the community tab, and then we'll be back the week after that. But make it a great week, and we'll see you then. Take care.